and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host, and my pirate name is Captain Benjamin Roughnight.
Arr, and I'm Matt Freeman, and my pirate name be Fartin Hubert Drake.
I was considering whether we wanted to do pirate voices for the intro, and I decided against it, and I guess I didn't tell that to you.
Oh, there was nothing that could stop me, Scott.
Okay, Fartin Hubert. Fun fact, that's actually, I plugged both of our names into a pirate name generator. I don't understand how it works, but you're Fartin Hubert Drake.
That sounds perfect.
Fartin Hubert. This week on the show, our 10-part series, Deconstructing the Films of Gore Verbinski, continues with the director's fourth feature film. We're talking about 2003's Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. This is the big one, Matt. This is the thing that really opens Verbinski's career wide open.
Yeah. This is what everyone thinks of when they think of Verbinski, and rightly so. This is such an incredibly fun movie. I'm gonna have a hard time keeping this episode to a reasonable length, I think, because there is so much to talk about. There
is, and you have to keep me honest on this. I'm saying this up front. I'm gonna have a hard time not transitioning the conversation into the other two movies because I adore those films as well, and I'm really anxious to talk about those. So we're gonna try to keep it just this movie, just the first one. Don't let me go off, Matt. Don't let me do it.
Okay, I won't.
Then I want to chat with you about another director and his newest film, because I watched Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, and I have some things to say about it.
All right, and I didn't, so I'll just kind of zone out and think about pirates while you talk about that.
That's fine, because now I kind of want to. Here's my pitch here is Zack Snyder's not a very good director, and you seem to have forgotten that when. I took 1 week off and suddenly you're like raving about this terrible Justice League cut. So I need to remind you why Zack Snyder is not a very good filmmaker. And fortunately, he provided me with a great example of exactly that.
Okay. I mean, I'll just go watch the Justice League movie again and remember how great he is, but whatever.
It's fucking terrible. 4 hours. Jesus Christ. All right, Matt, let's get right into it. And let's talk about Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl.
Forgot one very important thing, mate. I'm Captain Jack Sparrow. Not sure I deserve it. You're not facing normal pirates. Cruel, demented, vicious pirates, to be certain.
Say goodbye. Goodbye.
But cruel, demented, vicious pirates who cannot be killed.
The moonlight shows us for what we really are.
That's interesting.
We are cursed men.
I hardly believe in ghost stories anymore.
You best start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one.
Matt, what is this movie all about?
Blacksmith Will Turner teams up with eccentric pirate Captain Jack Sparrow to save his love, the governor's daughter, from Jack's former pirate allies, who are now undead.
First of all, a couple things here. Buried the lead on the undead part. Also, this IMDb summary puts captain in quotes, which I think Jack Sparrow would take issue with.
He would scare quotes as if he's not actually a captain.
Yeah. This screenplay is written by Ted Elliott and Terry Rosso, which, Matt, is the screenwriting duo that brought you 1992's Aladdin, The Mask of Zorro, and Shrek. So wow. These guys write a lot of things, and some of them are very good.
Yeah, some of those things are very good.
This movie is, of course, directed by Gore Verbinski, and it stars Johnny Depp, Orlando Bloom, Keira Knightley, and, of course, Geoffrey Rush, a man who we have lots to say about. Yeah, as Captain Barbossa.
Yeah, we're gonna have a good half hour chunk of this review where we just talk about Geoffrey Rush, even though this is supposed to be looking into Gore Verbinski. I mean, the genius of Gore Verbinski is in choosing Geoffrey Rush to play the pirate captain.
Yeah, clearly the best choice he made on this entire movie is casting Geoffrey Rush. Yes. Mm-hmm. I think what we need to do before we really dive into this movie, Matt, is kind of set the stage for it, because I think this is a really important movie in that up until this movie, pirates movies were notorious for losing people a shit ton of money. I think Cutthroat Island is a movie that came out in 1995 that like almost bankrupted a studio.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so after that movie, it did so bad, they just gave up on Pirates movies. Like no pirate movie was made after 1995. They just said, nope, we're not doing that anymore. And then Pirates of the Caribbean comes along. And the interesting thing about this movie, I think, is obviously this was based on a Walt Disneyland ride. And it almost didn't happen, Matt, because Disney at this time was making a lot of their movies into rides. There was Mission to Mars, which was a ride at Epcot. There was also, I think, the Country Bears, which was a thing at Magic Kingdom. Those two movies did not do very good. And so Disney was like, oh, this was a terrible idea. Mid-production, they were like, we're canceling the Pirates of the Caribbean movie. We're canceling it. We're done. And Gore Verbinski was like, no, please, 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 please. He begged them to let him finish this movie. And they threw him a bone. But I mean, the interesting thing about this movie is he was basically battling the suits on everything, every step of the way. They didn't trust the movie. They didn't think the movie was going to be good. They didn't have faith in the movie. And so he had to fight for every single thing he got. Of course, we know the end of the story is that this movie was a massive hit, made so much money. I think the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise is like one of the top 10 most successful movie franchises in history. So Gore Verbinski gets the last laugh here, but it's kind of wild to think that this just almost didn't happen. And it's kind of really impressive from a Verbinski standpoint to see that he got his vision down in an environment that was really pushing back against him.
Yeah, I guess that is a really important thing to talk about. Just the fact that he knows when he's got something good and he knows what he's doing. It's funny to me that they were just thinking of this as like another one of our cash grab attempts to monetize a ride. Yeah. Which is really kind of a dumb idea in the first place. And I've talked before about how just the notion of doing this at all is ridiculous. Like it sounds so stupid. You're like, yeah, we're going to make a movie because we happen to have a ride at the theme park that vaguely is related to this. But yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly good script, right? Like it's an extraordinarily tight script that can't be overstated. But then he takes the script and he just executes as close to flawlessly as I think it is possible to do, especially in something as complicated as this.
So complicated. I mean, I think first we'll say that any water production is a nightmare, right? Mm-hmm. Like anytime you do a movie that largely takes place on water, it's a nightmare. It is a pain in the ass to logistically, like, ask Steven Spielberg how Jaws went. Like, it's just a giant pain in the ass. And Gore Verbinski was like, really, he wanted to shoot this movie in the Caribbean. He wanted to shoot it in the Caribbean. It's called Pirates of the Caribbean. I want to shoot it there. And so they found, like, basically every single bay that exists in the Caribbean has a giant city there, because of course it would, because it's a beautiful bay. And so they struggled to find a place that was kind of empty enough to shoot I think the Port Royal stuff. And they eventually found one. And then it's like in the middle of fucking nowhere. So like you just like think they had to boat people to the set. Like, think of the food logistics. I mean, like, the logistics of this whole thing are just incredible. And that's just like on the basic level, like technical level. Yeah. It's really complicated. It is a tight script. It is also a complicated script. There are a lot of double crossing and triple crossing and different people's motives that need to be depicted visually if people are going to be able to follow it. This was a degree of difficulty here is like 10 out of 10.
Yeah, right. And like you said, that's just sort of for the bare minimum level of the storytelling.
Yeah.
Then we start to talk about like the action scenes, where I think this is where Verbinski really distinguishes himself as some sort of incredible genius savant of directing action. Because like he takes sort of what he was doing in Mouse Hunt, where there's this incredible economy of shots and just perfect visual storytelling as, you know, these two men are chasing this mouse around, except now it's two naval wooden ships chasing each other, and then flipping around to shoot cannon broadsides, and then people boarding the ships, and then 87 people having sword fights, and then like 15 different sort of like subplots within that you're following, where each of the characters is doing different things and you have a sense of the geography of it, and they're chasing the coin around. and it all works perfectly, and like
Yeah.
you're never confused. There's never any shot that feels like I think it's good to compare this to other movies and realize how impossible this is.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially back then when like they can't just like I think they probably used some computer effects in this movie, I would guess, but
No, Matt, the skeleton men were real.
I mean it was 2003, so it wasn't like today where you just have like you just kind of assume like, oh well, the ships are obviously CGI. It's like, well, maybe there were some CGI effects and they were like matte paintings and stuff.
I mean, they were like miles out to sea for a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
Like the Interceptor ship is another ship that they just bought and painted.
Yeah.
The Dauntless, the big one, they built. It's not like they didn't build the whole ship. They built it in pieces and it's on a barge. And so they shoot all the shit was really on the water is the crazy thing. They wanted to use the big giant water tank that Cameron used on Titanic, but Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World was filming at the same time and they had that booked, so they couldn't do that. So like so much of this on the water stuff, is in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
It's fucking nuts.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
It's on real ships and yeah, just how you do this, I don't even know. Like it's just it seems impossible. And it works so well. And God, like, again, I mean, we're repeating ourselves, I guess, or I am anyway, but like an incredibly intricate clockwork movie and then just like executed perfectly. And everybody loves this movie. Like there's nobody in the world who doesn't like this movie. Yeah.
I mean, I think when you and I get to the difference of opinion, it's going to be on the later ones. I think we're totally on the same page here, that this is just a delightful, fun, well executed, well told story. I mean, the thing I if we're getting into the action scenes first, the thing I really like particularly is that I think Verbinski understands that for an action scene to work, especially like you said, one that gets very big, like the different objectives need to be very clearly defined and the stakes for each of the individual characters. And I think he does a really good job of like showing the ebb and flow of those character wants. Like I think Jack is chasing the coin through much of the battle going on around them. So we understand the two sides fighting against each other. And then we have our three characters that are really trying to do different things within those same fights. And I think it's just really good visual storytelling in that regard. I think the fact that he so clearly defines our like comedic relief characters on both the pirate side and on the redcoat side also helps with that, because we can cut to them for like a comedic beat that also helps understand what's going on with the story. Like we learn, like we're told that because they threw everything off their ship, that they have nothing else to shoot at the Black Pearl, but they just stuff it with everything. We're told that, but Verbinski shows us that in a comedy beat in which they're shooting silverware at the other ship, and one hilariously just lands perfectly into the wooden eye guy.
Right.
And it's just all that stuff is really good. I think the same thing with the original duel between Jack Sparrow and Will Turner in the blacksmith hut is like, it's such a good one-on-one scene. I mean, like, not since The Princess Bride has there been, in my opinion, a sword fight that does as much storytelling lifting as this one does, because it's teaching you about these characters at the same time. It's defining who Will Turner is as a person, and he's our protagonist, right? So we really need to understand his starting point in a couple ways, like one with Elizabeth and two with Jack Sparrow. And I don't know, like everything about that scene works really well. And it's also, it's kind of in some ways Jackie Chan-ish in the way it uses the environment to tell the story and to escalate and de-escalate the fight. I think it's just remarkable. Yeah,
it's a great introduction to the kind of movie that you're getting into, because you know, the first time you see this movie, you're like, all right, yeah, pirates and there's going to be ships and there's probably going to be swashbuckling, but like the way that fight goes, it keeps stepping up until we get to the point where they're launching each other up onto the rafters using the cart.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's absurd and that would never happen, but you're so into it that you're just like, okay, I get it. Like, this is going to be a ridiculous movie and stuff like this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And And then of course, like you said, like not only is there this incredibly fun sword fight, but also you're learning about your character. You're also learning about Jack Sparrow. I love the way that ends, where everything you've seen from the Jack Sparrow character has been sort of absurd and like surreal, like just bizarre. And then you see like the crack of seriousness, where he's like, this shot was not meant for you. And it's like that's the very fun. I think that's like the excellent thing that Johnny Depp is bringing, or maybe this is a direction choice. I'm not really sure, but like, I love that Jack Sparrow 95% of the time seems like he's like crazy and like he's in a different movie. And then like 5% of the time he's extremely serious and goal oriented. And then you're like, well, wait a minute. Is this who he really is? And he's just acting the rest of the time. And like, is that a put on? And and the characters even sort of are like aware of this too. Like, I don't know. I love that aspect of the Jack Sparrow character. I think that's what everyone loves.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we need to give Johnny Depp all the credit in the world for developing this character and playing him that way. But you're right. I mean, I do want to also give Gore Verbinski credit. Going back to my no one at the studio believed in this movie thing, they hated what Johnny Depp was doing with this character. Michael Eisner, the CEO of Disney, was like, absolutely fucking not. Like, that is awful. It's not going to work. I don't know why he decided to do this. And it was Gore Verbinski that believed in this. It said no, that said Johnny Depp has cracked something here. He's on to something here. It's really engaging and believable. And I think it's really important. And it's important for a lot of reasons. I think the most important thing about Jack Sparrow is that he's not the protagonist. And I say this because that's the error that movie 4 and 5 made, which we're never going to talk about because those weren't directed by Gore Verbinski. So thank God we don't have to talk about those movies. But in those movies, they just make Jack Sparrow the protagonist. And he's not the protagonist of this movie. Jack Sparrow is the instigator of change in this movie. Like, you could refer to him as the inciting incident made flesh, right? He's the character that serves as the inciting incident. He's dropped into all situations and he pushes each one of our characters towards their change. Yeah. And that's what his role in the movie is. And Johnny Depp's performance of that is perfect, because you're right. It's unhinged in a way that throws characters off balance, but it's also very serious in a way where it actually pushes them towards the things that they don't realize they need quite yet.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's hard to remember what it was like to watch this movie for the first time, but he is, in a sense, the antagonist.
Sure.
He is actively manipulating our characters and lying to them for almost the entire movie, and it is only at the very end that we get the resolution as to whether he is like a horrible monster who was planning on betraying and killing them the whole time or not. Because you could really buy it either way up until the end. Because like, yeah, he's completely duplicitous. And you know, I love the beat where it's a very small thing really, but like he tricks the soldiers into letting him go into the pirate cave, and then he's going to tell the pirates that the soldiers are outside, and it's like this double cross. You're like, oh man, he's going to get all the good guys killed, and he kind of does actually. Like a huge number of people die because of that. But you know, we're still able to accept him as the thief with the heart of gold archetype, because
I think this is because the movie, this is such a tight script and it understands the save the cat moment, right? Jack Sparrow, first of all, before we get into this, Jack Sparrow's introduction in this movie is like the greatest thing in the world. The wonderful pull-out shot of him on top of the mast as the camera slowly pulls out and we realize that the ship is sinking and the mast is the only thing that we can still see is just amazing. It is awe-inspiring and hilarious all at the same time, which is perfect for Jack Sparrow.
Yeah.
But his real first action in the movie is when he's trying to steal the interceptor and he sees Elizabeth Swann fall into the water. And he doesn't know who she is at that point. There's no like advantage or leverage, to use his word, to saving her, right? Because he knows nothing about her. He doesn't know who she is. He's not aware of the power she wields and how he could use that yet. But she's a woman that just is drowning in the water, so he jumps in to save her. And that is Jack Sparrow, right? Yes, as soon as he figures out who she is, he immediately starts using her for leverage to get what he wants, but he's still the guy that's going to jump into the water and save a drowning person. And that's the kind of like back and forth of Jack Sparrow and why you love him, because I think that's at his core. And then everything else is just this confusing whirlwind of which side is he on right now.
Yeah, right. And you know, back to what we were saying a second ago, like he's the antagonist in the sense that he's basically acting against the interests of our main characters, except he's actually not, but they don't know that. So
yeah, I mean, he's acting. It's interesting because he comes off as the antagonist because back to our wants and needs paradigm, he's acting against the wants of Will Turner, but not that he's acting for the needs of Will Turner.
That's
like
true.
Like Will's arc in this movie is going from a very like straight-laced like pro-authority guy. Like I keep jumping around, but I love Will's introduction as well, because Will meets Elizabeth, and that line, which I actually the first time I saw this movie thought was so romantic, where he won't call her Elizabeth, he'll only call her Miss Swan, and she says, "How many times will I have to tell you to call me Elizabeth?" And he says, "As always, at least one more, Miss Swan." And I'm like, oh man, that's fucking smooth. But the answer to that is her father, Governor Swan, says, "Oh yeah, at least someone around here has propriety and like knows their place." And that's like Will. Like Elizabeth is this person that feels hemmed in by her responsibilities. Like the corset is a wonderful visual image and metaphor of that, of her feeling completely constricted and trapped by her environment. But Orlando Bloom's character starts off like welcoming that. He's fine with that. Like that is maybe fine with it is not the right word, because he's kind of still pushing against the annoyance that he's the blacksmith and is not getting all the credit for it. But he's like living within the system. He's the opposite of a pirate in every way. And the movie is about him learning to embrace the side of him that he was kind of burying and hiding and wrapping up in a corset in certain ways.
Yeah, right. He's not being true to himself. And the thing is, Elizabeth can see that. And I mean, I think that they actually, the two, you know, sort of romantic leads, I think, do a good job of conveying what's going on there with really little to no dialogue. Like there's very little time in the movie spent on their romance, but I think it is exactly the right amount, because you understand that like she loves him, but she knows that he's not being who he should be.
Yeah.
And you get the sense that she's been waiting for years for him to like become the man that she knows he is. And he doesn't like understand that he's not being true to himself. And then the movie, of course, you know, evolves and she can't tell him that because she's not supposed to be with him. And she knows this. And of course, Elizabeth is the most piratey pirate out of all of these people. Like she almost manipulates people more than Sparrow does. Yeah.
And that she's like the wonderful scene where she's trapped on the island with him and like gets him drunk so she can freely burn the rum and get a smoke signal, and is of course completely right. And then what does she do right after that? She immediately like agrees to a proposal that she in no way wants. Like she's just really good at manipulating and controlling people, and she's fantastic at it.
I think that's the like my actually favorite thing about the script is how high agency and clever everyone is all the time. Like all the characters are constantly scheming and doing the clever thing that it makes sense for them to be doing at the time. Like she does that, and Will figures out that he's the one the pirates want, and so he tells them that he's going to kill himself if they don't let her go. And it's just like this constant like you know, merry-go-round of people outflanking each other with clever trickery. And you know, there's all of the main characters are always doing this sort of thing to each other. I would argue in the later movies it just goes completely off the rails, and I'm just like, okay, whatever. But in this movie it's like the perfect amount of it where you're just kind of delighted the whole time. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that anchors the movie is it's wonderful use of 3 beats and callback. You know, like there's so many beats that we repeat over and over again. We have the parlay moment that's used. We have that is without a doubt the worst pirate I've ever seen, like is called back. The sparrow getting slapped by women, like all these things are like done over and over again to kind of add structure and I mean, like 3 beats make people enjoy things because they feel like they're in on a private joke with the film, and I think the script utilizes them perfectly. Yeah,
you will always remember this as the day you almost.
God, Johnny Depp is so good.
It's great. Is it time for Geoffrey Rush corner now?
Let's move to Geoffrey Rush corner and talk about how. So okay, there is no actual need in the movie for Captain Barbossa to be as compelling of a character as he is.
Yeah.
I think you've correctly identified the fact that Jack Sparrow serves as the kind of de facto antagonist for much of the film. And so Barbossa, like, I think this is actually a movie that could have gotten away with Barbossa being a relatively flat character who's just evil bad guy that we need to defeat. But this movie doesn't do that because they cast Geoffrey Rush and they actually wrote a really compelling character for Barbossa that Rush like brings to life in the best way possible.
Yeah. Apparently Rush basically thought up his own backstory for Barbossa just so that he could have like context, you know, within which to embody the character. and it's just so, I mean, he's just a great actor, and he brings all of that to bear on what could be just sort of a stock sort of ridiculous pirate captain where the whole character is just the accent and the outfit. And it's like, no, every time Barbossa's on the screen, you're looking at his face because there's like layers of like anger and frustration and pathos and longing and you know, sort of sarcastic irony. And it's just, he's so, and of course his voice and the way he inflects things, and just like the dripping sarcasm in certain scenes, like every line read and the whole thing is like a perfect, just couldn't be any different than it is. And
no, he's got the pirate voice so down.
Yeah,
it's just perfect. Like, it's when you close your eyes and imagine what a pirate sounds like, it's Geoffrey Rush doing the pirate voice. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And my dude just wanted to eat some apples. Like, he just really wanted to eat an apple. That's all he wanted.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the best scenes is definitely when he's in the cabin with her and he's watching her eat, because that's like the closest he can get to enjoying anything anymore.
It's so great because it's perfectly set up as it's poisoned type thing, which is exactly what they do with it. Where like he's really intently watching her eat and you're like, oh, he's poisoning her. But no, you're absolutely right. He just wants to see what her face is like when she bites into an apple and can actually taste it. And that's like the 3 beat. That's like his 3 beat throughout the thing. Like, he's always carrying an apple. I think everyone's talking about the first thing they're going to do when the curse is over. And he's like, I'm just going to eat a whole bushel of apples.
Yeah.
And then when he dies, he has an apple in his hand somehow.
Oh yeah. He must have had it on him.
Yeah, he just carried it on him just in case.
I mean, he probably did have it on him because if he thought they were going to go undo the curse, then he would have made sure to carry that with him.
Yeah, but no, this is the headcanon. Here's what happened. He had it on him, of course. It was in his pocket.
Yeah.
He gets shot. The curse is broken. He realizes the curse is broken when he says, I feel cold. And the first thing he does as he's dying is reach into his pocket and pull out the apple because he's just trying to get that thing to his face before he collapses. And he just doesn't make it in time. I
mean, I'm going to accept your headcanon. And the thing is, I wouldn't put it past them to have like actually thought that through. Like just because like everything is actually so exceedingly well thought out.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say shot out because of like the construction of the shots is one of the things that proves that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's so many fun little things where it's like you didn't have to do that, but like for example, you know, in that sort of fight you were just referencing, when they're all running around and there's the beams of moonlight coming in through the ceiling, and the characters are going in and out of being skeleton form.
Yeah,
and it's like that's just so fun.
It's so fun, and it's so hard. Like
Yeah.
they just took what was already going to be a pretty complicated fight scene,
Right.
and they said, "Oh, also, you're going to have to animate this switch to CG constantly throughout this whole fight." And God, talk about giving like, if I'm the CG artist, I'm like, fuck,
Yeah,
this is going to be so hard.
There's-
I mean,
yeah.
Matt, that whole cave
Mhm.
is amazing.
Mhm.
Like they built that entire set, and they flooded. There's 4 feet of water in that entire set that they completely flooded that whole thing. It's one of the biggest sets I've ever seen, and I think the coolest thing about it is that it kind of looks like the ride. The crazy thing about this movie to me is they both pulled off taking a terrible idea, which is to take a Disneyland ride and make it into a movie, while also, I think, paying wonderful homage to the ride itself, because that cave just it both looks like a real place and also kind of looks a little fakeish and not in a bad way, like in a way that just like is channeling the ride itself. And I don't know, it's just, I loved it. I loved like the attention to detail. I don't know how long it took them to throw all that treasure everywhere, but it was probably like 2 crew members, like entire job on the movie, and they spent hours and hours and hours.
Right. Just truckloads of treasure.
Yeah.
Right. It's funny. It looks fake in the same way that like the Cave of Wonders looks fake in Aladdin, where you're like, this is not a natural thing, but you don't care because you've already switched over into Fantasyland.
Sure. Yeah, especially when there's like a giant chest of Aztec gold in the middle of it. Yeah.
Right.
Wonderful. What a delightful conceit of a movie to make a pirates movie in which the goal of the pirates is to return the treasure, not steal it. I love it.
Yeah. That's so fun.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about is Verbinski's camera a little bit, because I was really paying attention in this movie. It's something I've been paying attention to in the last few movies, but I think this is the place where he gets to really use it in all its glory, because this is the biggest movie he's worked on. Gore Verbinski loves a moving camera. Like we kind of talked about in the past, we talked about Shyamalan, who really loves a static camera.
Mm-hmm.
He really like frames an image, a static image, and then uses character movement through the image to tell the story. Verbinski, on the other hand, his camera is like constantly moving.
Yeah.
And in this movie, they had access to a lot of cranes, I guess, because it's his camera swoops. It there's a scene at the very beginning of the movie that really stuck out to me, where it's when Elizabeth is pulled over to the side of the fort with Norrington, where he's like working his way out to propose, and she's about to pass out, where the camera actually starts like below the lip of the fort and then just cranes over it in this beautiful shot. And that's what, like, he does this everywhere. And I think the place where it's most effective to me is actually the action scenes, because like the camera's just like whirling around them. Like, I mean, when the pirates break into the mayor's house and they're chasing after Elizabeth, the camera is chasing after Elizabeth. And like Verbinski does this thing where he cuts to an insert shot of the door to that she's locked jiggling. And instead of just cutting to a static image of the door jiggling, he cuts to it and then pushes in on it. Mm-hmm. And it's just like his camera just doesn't stop moving. And I think it adds so much energy. Like you think to yourself, like, how do you make an adventure feeling movie in a camera, right?
Yeah.
Like what are the tricks to take this movie and say, oh, this feels adventure-y?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it. I think it's the kind of swooping and soaring and constant moving of the camera, even in the small insular scenes. And then of course in the big wide scenes where you got the ships and he just films these ships so lovingly and he's like flying around them. It's so good. But yeah, he loves that moving camera.
I think another thing that does is it gives us an incredibly good sense of the geography and the 3D space that the action scenes are operating in. Like you were just talking about the scene where they're chasing Elizabeth into the house. I think I could draw you a rough floor plan of like that, not the entire house, but the parts of the house that we see.
Sure.
Because of the fact that we're following people around. It's not just like, okay, now we're in this room, and so we're going to cut to a shot from inside that room. It's like, no, we're maybe going to like follow her through the door before we, and then there will be a shot from inside that room or something like that. There's other things later where like one shot or it's not one shot, but it's a sequence of shots that came to my mind when you were going through all of that, was when Jack and Will are crossing the floor of the harbor with a boat over their heads, which wouldn't actually work, but
which
that's
is
fine.
literally impossible. They would not have the strength to hold that
hold
air in there.
The air. That this is the thing, is I love the
but
movie.
Who cares?
I don't care.
Yeah, who cares?
And then so there's like, I'm not going to get it exactly right, but like there's a shot from outside the boat showing them. There's a shot from inside showing them breathing, and then it pans down. It's not a cut; it's a pan down from Will's face to where he has stepped in a crab trap.
Yeah,
and then I believe, I'm not sure if it's a cut or if we follow it, but we basically follow the line of the crab trap up to the surface where it shows the bob that's connected to the crab trap, and like a little boy looking at it quizzically and noticing it. And then that connects us to the next shot, which is like what's happening on the surface. So it's this connected series of, like, it reminds me a lot of the stuff that happens in Mouse Hunt a lot, where we're joining two scenes together instead of just cutting from what are Will and Jack doing to the surface. It's a shot, it's a sequence of little visual storytelling beats that connect the two things. And it was, in a sense, it's unnecessary, right? Like there's no reason to do Will steps in the crab trap because it doesn't matter, right? Nothing happens because of that, but it's just more fun and it connects it, and it gives us a sense of where they are, right? It gives us, because now we see, okay, they're right there in the harbor because that's where the bob is, you know, like in terms of where they are in the harbor. And that, so it's very subtle, but he's constantly giving us a sense of where everything is relative to everything else.
Yes.
Which is really important when you're doing really complicated action scenes.
I totally agree with you. And not to, this is going to sound like I'm contradicting you, but it's not. But like, I noticed on this viewing, my first time ever, that the rope that's attached to the crab trap and the bobber is what they use to climb up the Dauntless, which is kind of hilarious because that means if Will hadn't stepped in the crab trap, how would they have climbed this massive ship? I don't know, but that's what they used. Like I noticed that for the first time. It's great.
I didn't notice that. So it is plot relevant. Yeah.
I mean, barely though, but I think you're right. I mean, I think what it does primarily is link scenes together. I mean, it's a funny beat that just like seeing the kid kind of side eye the bobber just going through is a funny beat to kind of draw attention to the absurdity of what they're doing. But also, yeah, it connects the scenes. I think you're right. I do think it cuts when it gets to the surface, but it follows the line first and then cuts to the bobber. And then, it cuts to the next part, which is the people frantically like figuring out what's going on.
Yeah.
It's all great.
Right. I'm going to do a sort of sacrilege here where I'm going to compare this movie favorably against like the Indiana Jones movies or like anything of that vintage where it's like they couldn't really do the thing they were trying to do. And so there would be like awkward cuts to kind of hide the fact that you can't actually, like, you don't want to kill Harrison Ford with this Nazi truck. And so you're going to cut around the fact that you're not actually doing the thing that you are. And when you're watching it with an adult eye, you kind of see like, I get that the reason we shot it this way is because it's like a magic trick. You're hiding the fact that you couldn't do it. And this movie, like it never feels that way. It never feels like we're cutting around the fact that it was too hard to do this the convincing way. It's always just, no, we're gonna just do this the hard way, and it's gonna look great.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think this is the perfect like middle area between we're going to shoot all of this on green screen and not be on any actual sets and have any actual, like, there's a lot of CG in this movie, of course there has to be, but yeah, a lot of this stuff is practical and a lot of this stuff is them, spending the money to make this stuff work and make it as realistic as seeming as possible. Yeah. Cause like a 2021 version of the Pirate Cave is just like a backdrop and then a bunch of blue screen that they're going to composite in the rest of the cave on later, Right. Like that's just the way they do it now. Yeah. And I think that loses so much of what makes that sequence and that set piece unique and feel great. And also, as we said, feel like the ride in certain ways.
Yeah. Same thing. I mean, all of the pirate ship fights would be just a part of the deck of a pirate ship on a green screen, and CGI in the guys swinging in on ropes, right? Which I really do think you lose so much when you do that kind of thing, because like everybody in the scene, because the guy swinging on the rope is really there. He's really a stunt man swinging in on a rope. They're reacting to that. You can't. It's kind of hard to fake, right? I mean, they are actors. It's kind of their job, but it is going to be hard to fake reacting to a guy who's not really there. I don't know. It's just incredibly well done. It's kind of, $140 million is a lot, but it's kind of hard to believe they made this movie on only $140 million.
I know. I mean, just thinking about just the logistics of shooting, where they shot and how they had to do it, and it's staggering at how they pulled this off. Yeah. I don't understand it, and I'm like, this is the thing. And I know like this movie has producers, and producers are like the project managers, but like you got to just give so much of the credit here to Gore Verbinski and the production that he ran. And there were thousands of people involved in this movie. Obviously the auteur theory, especially in a movie like this, doesn't really hold up, but he was the captain of the ship, right? And he led them to success, and he trusted his actors when they were doing things that other people didn't like. He trusted his gut. He knew he had something here, and he fought for it all the way to the end. And he was right. Like this, how often does this happen in this industry, right? Where like the suits are convinced that you're wrong. They won't give you the time of day. You fight for it and you win, and then you're right. Like it's just incredible.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's so many risks. There's so many. I mean, the CGI with the skeletons and everything, that still looks fine even today.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great.
It's not as good as it would be if they did it with modern, but it almost works in the movie's favor. That it's a little cartoony, because I don't know if you want that to be hyper realistic.
Sure.
Like, because it's. I mean, I don't think it's fair to call it a kids movie, because there's a lot of stabbing people with swords, but like the way it's PG-13,
Yeah,
it's done in a way where the pirate violence is usually not like graphic, ultra violence. It's the sort of sanitized. I don't know why I keep mentally comparing it to Indiana Jones, but I guess it's because it's that same kind of swashbuckling adventure feel.
Sure.
Where, he shoots Nazis, but you don't really feel anything about that.
I think the Indiana Jones comparison is very apt, actually. I mean, it's a different kind of movie. It's playing in a different, I guess, genres space, but it is the same. It is channeling the same kind of emotions. Like it is channeling the same sense of adventure, the same sense of, recklessness and action and character. It's doing a lot of the same things.
Yeah, and those were always movies that were sort of built around these big set piece action scenes.
Yeah.
Which were, for their time, very complex and engaging, intense, and everything. And Gore just amps it up a few notches.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I love everything about where this movie leaves the characters. Like I swear to God, I'm not going to talk about the other movies, but I think it's a fun end to the characters, while also I believe that there's more to tell in the story. Like it's a satisfying end with feeling like, yeah, we could do more adventures. Like I'm here for that.
Yeah. I mean, I actually like that. It ends on Jack Sparrow, looking down at his compass, smiling to himself and shutting it. And that's actually the last shot. Cause that leaves you with this feeling of like, oh, the fun pirate character is going to go on to his next adventure. Yeah. And, indeed it does, because there's more movies, but even if this was the only one, that would still be like a great ending.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun because yes, the compass, like it's fun for multiple reasons, because like looking at your compass and is exactly that image you're talking about. But then when Gore Verbinski was thinking about what do we do with the next one, it's almost as if they took that shot and said, oh yeah, the compass. Right. That's like the one thing we didn't really explain in this movie.
I mean, I think I just easily buy that, like, this is a world where there's magic, and so the idea that he would just have a magic, like he's got, there's so much about his costume where his costume just exudes backstory.
Yeah.
Where, yeah, there's just so much about it where you're like, okay, this guy's lived an incredibly interesting life, and it totally makes sense that he would have a magic compass. He probably has a bunch of other magic shit that he's not even mentioning.
Which is true, because he's got one of the pieces of 8 sitting on the top of his head.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I the complaint about this stuff is that, yeah, you have these really cool things that you can tell have history to them and meaning, but we don't need to find out what they're about. And the movie definitely like. Definitely, like, the next 2 movies spend time like filling in all this backstory for everything and everyone, and that always feels a little disappointing. But I don't know, man. The thing about it is these movies get weird as shit.
Yeah,
and I'm there for it. Like, I think this is Gore Verbinski working with a script that was written before he came onto the project. A very limited, controlled process where he was fighting the entire time, and then the movie's a smash hit, and in the second and third one he gets to do whatever the fuck he wants, and there's something just incredibly pleasurable and that we're going to talk about seeing a man who is literally unleashed and can do whatever he wants, and the things that he comes up with are so fucking wild and extravagant in my opinion some of the best ways, and I just can't wait to talk about it.
I mean, he allows Geoffrey Rush to chew even more scenery despite the fact that he killed him in this movie. Bringing
Geoffrey Rush back was the most intelligent thing they did, because like, you have to, like, how do you, if they thought that they were going to have another movie, I don't think they ever would have killed him, because you can't, like, he's so good, you have to bring him back.
He's the best part. You
Yeah.
know, the thing that is both, it's in this movie, but it's sort of a background element, and then it becomes a bigger thing later, is like the movie is so it's a fantasy world where we're not really sure what pirates are.
Sure.
And what I mean by that is, like, in reality, pirates are just, you know, bandits, except with boats.
Yeah.
In this movie, pirates are something between like a religion and an ethnic group, where it's like, and like the fact that the movie ends with Elizabeth being like, you know, he's not a blacksmith, he's a pirate, and then her father smirks. It's like, what? Like, what? No, he's not. How is he a pirate? He was willing to break rules to rescue you specifically. That doesn't mean he's a pirate, but like within the universe of this movie and the subsequent movies, it's like, yeah, I think pirate is more like sort of a magical label that it has nothing to do with the historical meaning of what pirates are.
No, certainly not. I mean, it's a pirate in like when kids play pirates. That it's that type of pirate, right? It's just it's like a fun adventure having boat captain that says "arg" and has a parrot. Like, you know, it's that kind of thing. It's and I love it for it. Like, you're right. Like, no, there's actually like very little pirating in this in this movie. Like, yes, it's clear that the pirates have stolen stuff. Like, yes, the Black Pearl at the very beginning of the movie is invading the bay and like stealing their shit, but that's not actually what pirates did. They usually didn't like attack a fort directly. Right. They just would find merchant ships on the high seas and steal their shit and run away. Well, and that's not like that's it's almost the cover for their real purpose for being there.
Right. I mean, in reality, and I'm not a historian, but in reality, wasn't it more like the British would pay people to harass French ships, and the French would pay people to harass British ships?
Yeah.
And basically it was more like a sort of like Cold War guerrilla warfare thing than it was even like, oh, there are these like independent sea bandits. I know it was a long and complex history, and it's probably reductive to say that like, oh, this is what pirates are. But it's all fine. It's funny to me that the movie makes no attempt to connect to the real history of it. It just kind of paints this evocative image of like an era that never actually was, where the Caribbean is being harried by pirates constantly and barely defended by brave men like Norrington, who is a fun character we haven't really talked about much.
Yeah, well, I just to conclude this, I think for the better, right? Like, I'm so glad they didn't try to tell a serious movie about pirates or even try to channel like the reality of what a pirate was.
Yeah.
It's completely unnecessary. This is the version of pirates that everyone thinks of when they think about pirates. So those are the people we're going to talk about in the story.
Right.
Let's talk about Norrington.
Yeah. I mean, I guess Norrington as a way of talking about how none of the characters in this movie are really the stock characters that you would expect.
No.
Norrington is you know, you would expect him to be like jealous and prideful and resentful and, you know, do something unquestionably evil at some point. And it's like, no, actually he is admirable and competent consistently and makes and like is a total mensch at the end even. And then like there's a bunch of examples, like even Elizabeth's father, who is sort of comic relief, played by the inimitable Jonathan Pryce.
Yeah, so good.
But like even he has a few moments where it's like he breaks from the character archetype of just being like the totally staid, you know, stuffy aristocrat, and is like, well, Elizabeth, like, don't do what's going to make you miserable though, because I love you.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, that's he's a human too. They're all humans,
right? I mean, in a world where Will Turner's arc is to realize, to embrace the piratey side of him, it almost seems obvious that the true antagonist of the story would be Norrington, would be Governor Swan, would be the representatives of law and order and duty and propriety, like all these things that our character is learning that by fully embracing or wrapping yourselves in it it's actually not being true to who you are. Like, and it doesn't. Like certainly Norrington is standing between Will and Elizabeth at different points in the movie, and Governor Swan is as well. But yeah, like their ending choice is to release both of them, as if the movie is saying, yeah, these things, law and order and these things, they work for some people, but they don't work for everyone. And we all need to recognize what they do and don't work for. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, Jack Sparrow is the agent of change that helps everyone realize that.
Yeah. That's true. I really see Jack Sparrow as almost like a Puck character where he's the magical inciting incident more than he is even a character.
Yeah. I mean, he has a backstory in this movie and he has a motivation. They like give him these things, but he doesn't have an arc, at least in this movie. Like, yes, he gets his ship back. And so like, that's an external arc. He doesn't have really an internal arc. Like, he's not learning a lesson per se.
Right.
He's not, there's no fundamental internal change in Jack Sparrow. And that's not necessary because it's not his movie and that's not his role in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we don't really understand his interiority. And the thing is that I think it would kind of ruin the character if we really could say that we fully understood what his deal was, because he's supposed to be that mysterious. I mean, he's almost a wise old wizard like he's that's what makes him fun, is you can't really put him in a box. Like he's not the Obi-Wan. He's not quite the Puck because he's too active in the plot to be a Puck. You know, or you know, another example would just be like, you know, the god, if this were a Greek play or whatever. He has attributes of a lot of different sort of like agent of change archetypes without actually.
There's some Loki in there.
There's some Loki for sure. Yeah, that's another. Yeah, that's kind of one of the things I was reaching for. But yeah, like he's too active of a character to be any of those things, and it's fun because you've never quite seen this thing before, and then Depp really gets like what he's supposed to be doing. He understands the assignment, as they say on Twitter.
Don't ever say "as they say on Twitter" ever again. Don't do that. Yeah, I mean, he's remarkable, and I understand the desire to turn the series around him. I certainly think that the next two movies use him more than this one did and explore his character more than this one did. I do still think Verbinski understands that at the end of the day, this is a story about Will Turner and Elizabeth Swan. And even those next two movies, as they get into all the depth, Jack Sparrow backstory, and he's a much more driving force of the plot, it's still and Elizabeth and Will story. And that is consequently the thing that once Gore Verbinski said, I'm done with this, no one else understood.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, I don't know if you've seen the fourth and fifth movies, but they're trash. They're awful. Like
Nope.
second and third, not perfect movies by any means, but like diamonds compared to the next ones.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to talk about the next ones because my memory of them is of disappointment, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm still very excited because they are Gore Verbinski being handed giant piles of money and told to do whatever not whatever he wants, but like do your thing, man. And I know they're visually great. Like I know that.
I'm most excited to talk about them because this is a deconstructing director series, not like a deconstructing screenwriters series, right? Like I think from a writing perspective, from a story structure perspective, from all of these things, those movies are definitely considerably worse than this one. And I mean, that's because this is like the rare, tightly written blockbuster. Like this just doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
But yeah, from a directing perspective, from a visual art perspective, the things those movies do are just ridiculous and crazy and wonderful.
Yeah, and that's a fun era because as we talked about, this movie has good like functional CGI, but kind of in the shadows. It's intentionally very dark.
Yeah.
But the next ones are there's a lot of stuff in those movies that you could not do without heavy reliance on CGI in a lot of places.
Like Davy Jones is like mastercraft CGI work.
His whole crew, the Kraken, the shot where the guy is walking through the ship as the ship is like disintegrating around him.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being like stunning, right? Yeah, there's a lot, and it's going to be fun because that's basically us watching him kind of in real time as these technologies are being perfected. He is embracing them and putting them to use.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, I can't wait. Unfortunately, Matt, we cannot dive right into the next Pirates movie because in between The Curse of the Black Pearl and Dead Man's Chest, Gore Verbinski made another movie. In 2005, he made a film called The Weatherman, which is Nicolas Cage being sad in the era of Nicolas Cage being sad, which was right around Adaptation and all the other Nicolas Cage's sad movies. It's been I have not seen this movie since it came out, and so I don't have anything to say about it, like to set up our conversation, other than I remember liking it.
Yeah,
but not loving it.
Yeah, I've seen it as well. It is a very sort of grounded movie compared to this movie,
certainly, yeah.
It's very interesting. I would like to see if we can't find out why Verbinski makes the choices he makes. I'm not even criticizing this as his next choice. Like maybe there was something specific about this that really jumped out to him. But
are you speaking like broadly, like
broadly and about this next choice? Like in general, what attracts him to a movie, but then specifically why make The Weatherman after making Pirates of the Caribbean?
Sure.
Because yeah, I mean, it's from what I remember of it, it's like very like sort of dreary, like visually dreary. Like that's almost thematic. Contrast this to like this incredibly colorful and vibrant and visually active movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't wait to talk about it. It'll be very interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So we'll be doing that, I think, next week, actually.
Awesome.
All right. So that is it for the Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. Please let us know what you guys think of that movie. And now, Matt, it's time to talk about another director, another auteur, and his latest film. We're talking about Zack Snyder again, and we're talking about his Netflix film, Army of the Dead. This is kind of, I guess you would say, a return to the beginning for Zack Snyder, because Zack Snyder's first directorial feature was Dawn of the Dead. I think that movie came out, God, when was that? I think it was mid 2000s.
I make a point of not knowing about Zack Snyder's career. No, I don't know, but yeah, please tell me about this new work of genius.
So that's what everyone's been saying. It's like a return to the beginning for Zack Snyder. Here's the thing: it's not. Dawn of the Dead was a movie written by James Gunn, who is a very good writer / director. Guardians of the Galaxy, very good movies. Zack Snyder did not write Dawn of the Dead. Zack Snyder did write Army of the Dead. He also was the director of photography on Army of the Dead, as well as just the director. And he's not very good at any of those things, Matt.
So why, Scott, why is it that every piece of this movie that I see in like a clip or like a trailer, it looks like it's out of focus?
Because Zack Snyder thought it would be really fun to use lenses that have the shallowest depth of field ever. So if you are not standing right up next to the lens, you are going to be out of focus. Is there like an aesthetic, like thematic reason for that? Not that I can see. I mean, I'm sure he had something in his head for why he was doing that, but it just makes a movie that's like really hard to see, especially when it gets dark. If it's dark in this movie, you can't tell what the fuck is going on.
I think maybe the idea, and I don't know this, but it might be that like in a scary movie, if you can't see it's like, it's actually kind of like what we were talking about on the last Verbinski movie, where you see the woman and then the hallway behind her is out of focus, and your brain has trained you from watching horror movies that something's going to come from that hallway or something's going to move across that hallway. When everything in the background is out of focus, it makes you anxious. But I think that probably wouldn't work if it were just that way all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me that's Snyder's biggest problem is like, I think he's not a stupid person, right? Like he understands filmmaking, he understands how these things work, but he also just loves, if he likes a thing, he's going to do it constantly. It's like with the slow-mo stuff, right? Like he loves the speed ramping. He loves that. And so he does it for everything. He does it for an action scene and he does it for a non-action scene. And there's no difference treated in how he frames a shot that's meant to be epic versus a shot that's meant to be mundane. He loves it and he's going to shoot it that way. And I think this is the same thing where he had this idea to use this shallow focus for perhaps the reason you're referring to, but he does it everywhere. This is such a mess of a movie. I mean, I would be lying if I say there weren't parts of it that I enjoyed, but it's not a good movie. To give the broad plot summary or overview, the entire city of Las Vegas has been taken over by zombies. It's been completely quarantined. The government is planning on dropping a nuke and killing everyone in Las Vegas. But there's some rich dude who has $200 million worth of money in a safe under one of the casinos. And so he hires Dave Bautista and a group of expert zombie killers to go make their way through Vegas into the casino, break open the safe, and steal all the money for him. So it's trying to be like a heist movie / zombie movie, but it's actually just like a terrible heist movie. It's just like there's no fun. The heist part doesn't matter, really. It's just an excuse to get people into the city, and it's so disappointing.
That does suck because it sounds like a fun premise. Like the idea of melding together a heist movie, except the complication is there's zombies. That's like, oh yeah, I can imagine that being a good idea, but it sounds like there were some issues.
What if you took out all the clever parts of Ocean's 11 and then made a ho-hum action zombie movie on top of that?
Yeah.
And like he's doing an interesting thing where like there's two different kinds of zombies. There's like this traditional zombies, and then there's like these super zombies, and they run fast and have feelings. And so like but like nothing like on the periphery of this movie is a lot of cultural commentary, I think, from Zack Snyder, but it just doesn't ever amount to anything within the movie itself. And so you're just kind of like, okay, he's making a commentary on things because Zack Snyder, again, is not stupid, and he understands that zombie movies from the beginning have been cultural commentary from the very beginning. From Night of the Living Dead, zombie movies have been a way to critique the culture that they take place in. He understands that, and he's trying to do that in this movie. And I just don't think he pulls it off, because he also like really likes speed ramping and amazing action sequences in which every single character is really good at headshotting zombies and will do it thousands of times. Yeah, it's God, it's bad. It's 2.5 hours long too. It's so long. It doesn't justify its length. It's like, I didn't expect to love it. I was excited about this movie though.
Was he maybe kind of going for like a retro kind of handheld style or something? Like does that explain maybe certain of the reasons why it looks the way it does? And
in some ways, yeah. In others, I don't think so. I don't know. I just don't think he should be a cinematographer like that. Like, hands down, he should have hired someone else to be his director of photography, who could have said, no, Zack, you can't use that lens for every shot. That's a bad lens for this shot. You don't have enough lighting in the scene to use that lens, Zack.
Yeah,
no.
It's interesting because like I don't think I'm just flatly against directors doing weird experimental things. In fact, no, I would never say that I'm against that. But like, if the movie's gonna cost a lot of money to make, shouldn't you try to make it good?
Yeah, I mean, especially when the weird experimental thing is maybe no one wants to see what's happening in the movie.
just in case people haven't seen this, like I've seen clips and like shots of this. There's a moment where like there's a woman standing in the foreground, and then Dave Bautista is standing maybe 3 feet kind of behind her.
Probably less.
Like 2 feet. Like basically standing right next to her. Basically.
Yeah, to the point where the composition of the scene is both of them.
Yeah.
The scene is about the two of them,
and she is in focus, and he is completely out of focus.
It's just
and blurry.
It's just ridiculous.
It's like you've never. I was like, I don't think I've ever seen that before, unless it was like an intentionally like avant-garde shot meant to portray the extreme distance between these two characters.
Right.
It's
right.
like no, they're just standing there.
No.
It's just.
That's the problem. Is yeah. I mean, like I like, this is the same kind of shit when employed in a meaningful way, I like get excited over. And my wife turns to me and says, I bet you like that shot, don't you? And I'm like, damn it, you know me too well. Like, I love this shit, but it's just not employed to any meaning here at all. Dave Bautista is good in the movie. I don't think he gets to like, this isn't a spoiler because it sets it up in the very beginning. He's a man that's was forced to kill his wife at the very beginning of the movie. And then like his relationship with his daughter is very estranged because of that. And so he's kind of like suffering multiple traumas. And so he's just very kind of wooden intentionally, which is like not what to do with Dave Bautista. I don't know. Like he needs to be the opposite of that. Like any actor who comes from wrestling should not be playing a wooden stilted character, in my opinion. Like that's just the wrong thing to do with them. Yeah,
that's interesting. They seem to be having trouble figuring out what to do with Dave Bautista. Like I loved his small role in Blade Runner 2049, where he is actually a much more subdued character, but that is he's in the movie for like 5 minutes, and I think that's why that works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They also completely replaced a character in this movie. So Chris D'Elia was a comedian that apparently was involved in some, like, he sexually assaulted several women. And so Zack Snyder basically, once they heard that, said, we're going to digitally move him out of the movie. We're going to replace him with a woman named Tig Notaro, who was completely digitally composited into this movie. She was not in the scenes with any of the characters. I think Dave Bautista has said he still never actually met her in person. And it's actually pretty functional. Like if I didn't know that going into the movie, I might not have noticed. But it's also really funny because she's always like, it's very clear. Like any scene that cuts to her, she's in the frame by herself. And then like the ones where they do like copy paste her into the frame with other people are in, like it's usually moving by very quickly to kind of hide that. I mean, I don't know if the original script of the story before they put her in was she's just with the helicopter the entire time, so she's like never with anyone else, or they had to move the script around to make this replacement work or whatever. She's really funny. I like her. But the final thing I'll say about this movie is it's like it's just aliens. Like Zack Snyder watched Aliens one weekend, and maybe it was while he was working on the script, and he just started writing aliens into it. And it's not like, and I'm not even like it's not even like it's accidentally or it's close. It's like directly being aliens, like intentionally in a lot of ways. Like they're direct quotes from aliens in this movie.
It's funny because I haven't seen it obviously, but it's like normally you would say like, oh, it's paying homage to aliens. But from what you've told me, it really is closer to just ripping off the plot and beats and everything of the movie. Like
it's just aliens. Yeah. It's like every bit of it. Like the way the characters are dressed, like there's a Hispanic woman in the movie who is dressed exactly like Vasquez, like intentionally. There's a Burke-esque character in the story. It's just aliens, man.
Oh man, I'm not gonna watch this.
I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, like I said, there are fun parts in it. I think some of the action scenes are filmed very good. Like I think Snyder can still film an action scene even if he's using the wrong lenses for it. There's still like some fun stuff with the extreme gore. There's like one good heist scene that combines the fact that it's a heist movie with zombies in it. One in the entire movie. Like there's one, and that's it. But it's awful. It's awful.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Me too. There's nothing like, here's the deal, man. I don't like Zack Snyder's movies commonly. Like I don't end up liking his movies very much, but like, I love the guy. Like the more I listen to him on like interviews and everything and media stuff, the more I like him. He seems hilarious. He's very excited. He loves making movies. He loves doing these things. He loves the opportunity to create this story. There's something going on in this movie that is Dave Bautista and his relationship with his daughter that I really honestly do feel like Zack Snyder is channeling some of the stuff that he was working through with the tragic death of his daughter. There's definitely some of that in here. I really think there is, but so I like the guy and I want him to succeed. And this is just not a good movie.
Yeah, it's a shame. You know, I think that the same reason why he makes decisions like doing the Justice League aspect ratio change, which I thought worked really well, is also the same reason why he does stuff like using ridiculous lenses, which don't work well. Like he has a wild idea and maybe it'll be revolutionary and really cool and people will like it. And it'll fit really well with what he's doing, and maybe it won't. But he's gonna try it either way.
Sure, yeah.
And I can admire being an experimental filmmaker.
Yeah, I mean, I admire it. I admire plenty about him. The aspect ratio choice was not a good one.
It was.
No, it was bad. It was bad.
It worked.
It did not work. It is completely. It's completely opposed to what the movie's trying to do in every way.
Just see my discussion of this with Daniel that doesn't involve Scott at all.
I did, and you were wrong.
I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to you, Scott.
That's it, though. That's it. Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead. Better luck next time, Zach.
Yep.
All right, folks, that's all we had for you this week. If you have any opinions on Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, God, I hate how long that title is, or on Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, you can feel free to reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on our Twitter account @doofmedia.
Yeah, if you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, then we encourage you to subscribe and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
And you can find this and all of our other shows at our website, doofmedia.com. And if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. Head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and pledge at any of the available levels. And you get a bunch of cool stuff, including one of our bonus podcasts that Ruben and Elliot work on called The High Ground. Or is it The Higher Ground? I never remember. I think it's just The High Ground. They started that podcast talking about the Star Wars prequels, but then they moved on to what series? To the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Amazing.
So they've currently covered the first 3 movies on that show, And I think they're going to do the next two for some god-awful reason I don't understand. But if you want to hear another Doof take on the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, you can pledge to us at the $10 level or higher, and you will get all 3 of those released episodes and a bunch of other cool stuff.
That's right. Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts, because every review that we get for the Doofcast really does help us to get more exposure and to introduce new people to the content that we make here.
That's right. We'll see you all next week when we continue our Deconstructing director series with Gore Verbinski's The Weatherman.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.